What's up, guys? Mindful here, and I know it's been a minute since I posted on this channel. Matter of fact, it's been a minute since I posted on the other channel. I had to do a couple things, but today we're to react to the Unwritten Rules of DBD. The video's by As He Moves. I'm hoping I'm saying that name right, but make sure you check him out.
Hey everyone, today we're discussing the unwritten rules of Dead by Daylight, the rules that exist collectively across the player base, but are not present in writing or by direct statement in game. Player-made rules that people will respect. I asked you all for your help on this, and the responses were very interesting. Let's get into it.
Oh, wow.
If it glows, it goes is maybe one of the oldest and most universal unwritten rules of
Never heard that
DBD,
one.
which started way back with the introduction of the hexes. The idea being that if a totem is glowing, then it needs to go and be broken. This started off as a straightforward idea, with hexes all originally being negative.
Question. It's probably gonna be solved when I watch the rest of the video, but I wonder if this is mainly for survivors or killers or equally. That's what I want to know. But from the thumbnail, I'm assuming it's just survivors. But anyway, let's go.
However, with time, there's more of a nuance to breaking hexes, and more danger with certain perks like Haunted Ground existing. Despite this, the sentiment largely remains the same of, if it glows, it goes. 95% of the time, it's going to benefit you, so get rid of it. This can also even apply to the killer side too nowadays, with boons existing. If it glows, it goes. If someone nods, you nod back.
Yep.
Was something mentioned a few times, and one I couldn't agree with more. Nodding can be a fun interaction in-game, and the animation itself usually looks pretty funny. This is also a good way to lighten your own mood if the intention of the original nod was to be toxic. It's a fun way for both sides to interact in general,
Okay.
and a nice encounter in the trials which can be reciprocated by both sides, and I think is largely not seen as a toxic action. Respect someone doing a glyph and let them finish is a more recent one that's caught on.
By the way, I'm going to be pausing this a good amount of times, just to let y'all know. Yes to the nodding. I love when I nod at a killer, they nod back. Most of the time, if a survivor nods at me, I'm going to nod back. But yeah, the glyphs. I didn't even know it was a rule, but I've been respecting people doing glyphs. Cause I'm like, bro, I know you're trying to do a challenge, so if I see your glyph pop up, or at least I see you interacting with it, something like that, I'm gonna let you finish. I'm still down you, but I'm gonna let you finish.
Ever since glyphs began appearing in the tomes, it's quite widespread that if you see someone interacting with a glyph as killer, you give them a few seconds to finish it before continuing the interaction. A small sign of respect and an understanding of the grind behind these challenges.
Facts.
If you find a glyph, you let the other person have it. This one I definitely follow too. If someone fails a skill check, stare at them, or some combination of this.
I do that too.
If someone does something embarrassing in-game, then you stare at them for a moment to show your disbelief. This is another funny one, I think, and definitely one I see people follow. Whether it's a killer missing a swing or a survivor missing a skill check, most people I encounter will take a moment to stare them down and show their disbelief. Let a survivor go if they played well is one that was mentioned too.
Depends. It really depends on how the game went. Like, if the game went good, like no one was being toxic, no one was, excessively teabagging every 2 seconds, then yeah, I do this. But like, if the whole team is toxic, no, I don't do this. Let's take toxicity out of the matter. If people are just playing normally, just looping me, I don't really care how well they do, if I'm being honest. Like, I do not care. If I need the kill, well, I ain't gonna say need. If I want the kill, I want the kill. If I don't want the kill, I'll let you live. I'll let you go. Most of the time, I'm going to let them go regardless. Most of the time. But if your whole team was toxic, you as well, you get on that hook, buddy. Just depends.
If a survivor manages to outplay you as killer, making you chase them for a while, then they deserve to get the hatch if they're the last remaining one. This one was funny though, and came with a sort of caveat of if they played well, but not too well. There's a sweet spot of them doing well, but not outplaying you so much you feel embarrassed or something, which I think is quite accurate. If Ghostface does a Mori, get into the selfie shot.
Most of the time I miss this. But one more thing on the previous one, sorry. Dang, it took so long I forgot. I was gonna say something else, but whatever. I can never catch when Ghostface is doing this. But next time I catch him doing it, I'm gonna try. I'm gonna try.
This one's more of a fun one, but one I do think is an unwritten rule. If you see the photo being taken, you've got to get into that shot and join them. When these happen, most people tend to do this, or just with Moris in general for that matter. I think that's sort of an unwritten rule too. If you're toxic, I get to be toxic back,
Facts.
is a definite sentiment shared by many, and sort of an unwritten rule. The idea that if you decide to be toxic in some way, whether that's teabagging or hitting on hook, then the other side then gets to do it back without feeling bad or as if it's unwarranted. I think this more widely applies to just general in-game things though. In general, if one side does something, the other side is going to follow suit. Oh, you use that tactic, therefore I'm going to use this tactic. If you do the gens faster than usual, then I'm going to start tunneling, and so on. I don't necessarily agree with all these situations, but it's more of the cause and effect rule that will inevitably vary from person to person. If you do this thing, then I get to do this thing. Probably not the best mindset to have for the wider game, but I think for something like toxicity, it's sort of fair play. We're talking purely in-game things considered toxic here too, not external things like calling a player a rude word after the game or something. You absolutely should not follow suit with things like that. We're talking like teabagging or hitting on hook. Boop the
You really gotta piss me off to make me wanna camp you on hook. And I'm talking before the gates even open. You gotta really piss me off. No one ever wants to boot my snoot. Some people do, but some people don't. A lot of people don't know how to do it though. A lot of people don't know that's a thing.
just as much a meme as it is an unwritten rule. If a pig growls at you, then you boop the snoot of the pig with the point action as survivor. This was one I personally wanted to clarify though, which is that the boop should only be initiated by the killer. Otherwise, there's times when a survivor will just come up expecting the game to come to a halt just to boop you, and all just because you're playing pig. I find that annoying personally, so for me, even as a survivor, I'll only try to boop if the killer initiates the interaction. It's the pig's snoot after all, and only she should decide who gets to boop it. Give hatch if you find it whilst carrying is one I definitely follow too.
Again. Depends. Personally, no, I do not go by this. If I feel like giving hatch, I'll give hatch. Also, if I'm doing a challenge where I need to 4K, mainly adepts, yeah, I'm not doing that. There's actually my last adept, my last video where I was doing adepts, hatch spawned literally right next to the hook, and I was like, oh, you gotta be kidding me. You have gotta be kidding me. It sucks, man, it sucks sometimes. But you gotta do what you gotta do. But I do not go by this, personally.
And I think the reason is I just sort of feel bad if I'm carrying the survivor past the hatch and they and I can hear it but I continue on. It's a case of, oh it's here, fine, and you drop them. This is one I follow and I see the majority of killer players follow too. I think it really is just human nature as well almost, that feeling of guilt if you don't drop them after hearing it. I'm not sure. Another hatch-based one was that if you're last alive being carried and the killer swings, you stop wiggling.
Now this one just depends. Again, a lot of these are just depending situations because it depends on the killer, how they are, their mood, how the game went. A lot of these are depending factors. Most of the time, if I stop wiggling, I still get hooked. But there are some times where I just like, where I don't hook and they actually do give me a hatch. Which luckily, one of the main reasons why I got some of my add-ups done this past week, survivor add-ups done this past week, is because some of these kills were nice enough to give me the hatch or let me escape. So, yeah, this also depends.
This is a common signal between players when you're the last alive. If you're on the killer's shoulders and they swing whilst you're wiggling, it's a sign to stop so they can carry you to the hatch. Some players do use this deceptively, but for the most part it's a common, universal and trusted sign and rule that most share and understand. If the last survivor drops their item, then let them go, is one that was mentioned quite a bit, and had a bit of a discussion around it too. An etiquette of a sort of a deal being made between both sides. If the survivor offers up their item, they're admitting defeat and giving you something in return for sparing them. I do think most people follow this, but often fairly contextually and depending on the situation, which is mostly what was being discussed. I know I, for one, don't really follow this if they do it in the middle of a match, say, and have simply run a chase poorly, but I probably will if it's the last one left. It's one of those rules I think most follow, but each with their own slightly adjusted rules on its execution.
I only do this if it's like, yeah, I only do this if it's in-game. If it's in-game and I find them at the gate and they put it down, I'll be like, alright, I'll let you go. Alright, I'll let you go. There are many ways to getting around me as a killer. If I'm about to attack you as killer and you point at me to go in a corner or something, I'm most likely going to go in that corner. Not because I want to, mainly because you told me to. Just saying.
If someone is sandbagged, go for the sandbagger.
I'm sorry. I am so sorry for pausing. We're almost halfway done with the video, but let's start. Oh my god, this is gonna be a 20-minute video. So this has happened to me before. I think I was the one sandbagged though. I don't think I was the killer in that situation, but I do try to go by this because that's kind of messed up. That's kind of messed up. Especially if it's intentional.
Is sort of a rule that encompasses all forms of toxicity noticed by the other side. If you see one of the survivors getting targeted by the others, then don't go for the one being targeted, go for the ones doing the targeting. The same can be done the other way around as survivor, not endorsing toxicity toward the killer player. This one is harder to act on but can still be doable. It's sort of a good manners rule, which I suppose is what many of these rules come down to. Respect the 4%.
I feel like I'm already about to disagree with this. Never mind.
Is one that's sometimes respected. This is the idea that if someone manages to unhook themselves, as a killer you respect that and let them go, or at least get some distance, looking on in disbelief that they managed it. It's partly down to it being a risky action to begin with, and therefore a shocking or impressive feat when it does work out for them. This one can be situational too, but I do see a good number of people following this.
I will let you get distance. If you manage the 4% and you don't have, and I'm assuming you don't have deliverance or anything else like that, I'll let you get some distance. I'm not saying I'm going to let you go though, but I'm going to let you get distance.
If you see 2 or more survivors,
I don't do this. Most of the time because I just don't have a lot of outfits for any of my survivors really. Just saying.
wearing the same outfits, join them, is sort of a silly rule, but I definitely follow this one. We've all been in a lobby before where multiple people are wearing the same outfit, and so the rule being that you switch to match them so you can be unified as a team, whether this be everyone playing the same character, everyone wearing the same outfit, or everyone running a character from a specific franchise like Resident Evil. I think this one's quite funny and definitely a fun rule to follow in general. It's nice to have that unity on the team, and a small little funny moment of connection with your teammates. The final one I saw quite a bit was, if you destroy the killer as survivors, give yourself up.
I've never seen the... Who is doing this? Who is doing this? Hold up.
The final one
Who is doing this? I don't care how easily I beat the killer, bro. I'm not just gonna let you hook me, bro. I'm not. No. That's honestly disrespectful. I would just leave.
I saw quite a bit was, if you destroy the killer as survivors, give yourself up as a sacrifice. This is interesting, where there seems to be an ongoing balance as an unwritten rule.
I've never heard of this.
If you do so well against the other side, you take pity on them, but if they just do sort of badly, you don't. It's this weird balance where one side needs to feel superior, and like they're throwing the other side a bone, if that makes sense. I'm not bashing it either, because it's quite interesting, because I definitely do these things too to an extent. Whatever side you're on,
I'm
you
not
have
gonna
to
do
feel
that.
like in your own head you've won that interaction or game before you decide to give yourself up, for example. So those were all the unwritten rules that largely got quite a bit of support or were fairly common. Next I want to look at some that were mentioned that are a bit more uncommon or debated. If there's a map offering, you can tunnel. Now of
Who the fuck? Where is this coming from? Okay, in my opinion, if a killer wants to tunnel, they're gonna tunnel. That's the end of it. I've had games where I was in it less than like 10 minutes because someone wanted to tunnel me out. I've had people go out of their way to tunnel me too, bro. Like, I've had people hook me, let me get unhooked, come back to hook. Didn't even care about the other survivor that unhooked me. Waited until, you know, my endurance ran out. Hit me again, hooked me again. I managed to hit. Someone managed to save me with a flashlight. I tried running away. They still grabbed me. Like, bro, if people want to tunnel, they're gonna tunnel, bro. They don't care how many gens they lose. They don't care anything about that. If people want to tunnel, they're gonna tunnel. That's just the end of it.
Of course, reasonably, you can tunnel whenever you like, there's not a rule there, but this is more of a moral rule, I suppose, if you typically don't tunnel. An exception where you're then allowing yourself to tunnel or play slightly more harshly as a result of the survivors choosing where the trial is going to take place and gaining an advantage. I think for lots of people this will adapt, like if you run dead hard you get tunneled, if you have an insta-heal you get tunneled. It's going to vary from person to person. I don't necessarily agree with this one because I really think it depends on the intent behind the player who uses it.
Really
are they using it
based.
because they like the map, or are they doing it specifically to have a game where they steamroll the other side? The issue of course being you can never really know. If you take an endurance hit, you can now be tunneled with...
Who's coming up with these rules, dude? Who's coming up with these rules? Oh my gosh.
without problem, is one I definitely follow myself. And again, you can tunnel whenever you want, but for
It would be silly for me to complain about tunneling here.
someone who doesn't typically tunnel, if someone takes a protection hit with their post-hook endurance, they are opening themselves up to be tunneled. Or in a simpler sense, if you put yourself in the way of danger, and utilize a mechanic for a purpose that isn't its primary intention, then you can expect the other side to take advantage of that, and you shouldn't feel too angry considering you made that cool. I think this one is...
Oh, okay. See, the beginning of it, I was maybe I should wait until bro stops speaking for me to say something. Maybe I should stop. Okay.
Entirely fair. If the survivor runs into a dead end with a breakable wall, break the wall. This was one I was really surprised by, and I think is quite respectable, although also maybe slightly silly considering it's just how maps are designed nowadays. The idea behind it presumably being a goodwill thing of letting someone go who got messed up by a map spawn. Does anyone else do this? Again, I think it's respectable, but definitely not one that is universally followed. Write GG no matter what.
Oh, I'm sorry. A lot of times it's not intentional, but a lot of times I do not write GGs, dude. I'm sorry. I just don't. I do not. Most of the time I do, but if I forget, I forget. I'm sorry. Again, this is another one where it's like debatable, like, depends on how the match went.
Is another one I do agree with, but it sort of has that asterisk of needing more context, as there's times when it's probably not the most appropriate to say GG if the other side was AFK, say, or something like that. I do for the most part do this, but I do think it's dependent on the situation. For a regular game though, win or lose, I do agree saying GG is a nice unwritten rule to follow. Even if you think the other side used some slightly unfair stuff, I think just say GG, move on, and it makes the game overall more positive. Never tunnel a TTV was...
I know for a fact that no one is following this. I know for a fact no one is following this. That's all I'm gonna say. Cause I can't even count how many times I've been tunneled out. That's all I'm gonna say.
One I saw appear and I thought I would include. Was never, again, is sort of a contextual thing. Maybe the TTV is trying to get your attention and wants to be tunneled and so on. In a normal game though, I agree. You should treat TTVs like you would any other player, is how I would personally phrase it. Often TTVs can get targeted due to the fact they're streaming, and I think it's just good manners basically to treat them as you would any other player in the trial. Tunnel the people with the weird names instead. If you make yourself unhookable, it's fair game to slug.
If you're unhookable, I won't try to hook you. What does that even mean?
Is one I think is completely fair, and one most people will understand. It's really more of a case where if you put a player on the other side in a place where they're unable to do anything, then you should expect them to ignore you for it. This is especially true in cases with boil over, where someone will go to a high up area and purposefully go down in a spot where you can't hook. If that happens, it's fair game to leave them on the ground. Play boring and you'll get left bored on the ground. Don't run perks you don't find fun to face is an interesting one I saw appear, and I think quite a valid one too, and can apply more broadly to killers, add-ons, and so on. If you don't like to face a thing, then you shouldn't run it. This one is interesting too because it's not something that's going to be confirmed by any other party necessarily, as most people will judge what a fun perk is differently. However, I do think this is a decent rule to have. If you're going to complain about a perk's usage, but then you go on to use it, it's sort of a one-sided thing. What do you think about that one? I think I generally tried to follow this. Always go back to save in the endgame.
Okay, I try to do this, but bro, if I'm dead hook, I'm not doing it. If I'm dead, and if I'm dead hook and I'm injured, I'm definitely not doing it, bro. So it depends on how many times I've been hooked, really. Also, it also depends on how far you are in the map. Because I never go to save, but most of the time, in-game, killers do not leave the hook, which is, again, that's actually one of the challenges in the Rift right now, where you have to save during the end game. Which is a very hard challenge to do because, again, most of the time, it wouldn't be so hard if they said you have to must say saved up safely. I can't even talk. If you have to free them safely, but what killer do you know is going to hook somebody and then go away in endgame? Explain to me that. Anyways, but yeah, again, this is debatable. Just depends on how many hooks I've been on.
Is a rule I generally follow too. This one simply being that if someone still remains in the trial in the endgame, then you should go back and give your best shot at saving them. My personal only stipulation to this is if the person has saved me previously in the endgame, and has quite clearly done this to trade spots. Then you don't go back because you undo their efforts. In general though, this one's just down to the player, I think. I personally play for the experience of the match, and I don't care if I escape really, so I would rather go back for the save most of the time, and have more interaction with the other side, whilst also hopefully saving a teammate. If a survivor starts playing a song, Let Them Finish is a new one that's arisen with the perk Bardic Influence. With this perk you pull out an instrument and play a few notes of a short song. This one's another one of those memey ones, but I do like the idea of following it. I can see this one becoming more widespread over time, although at the moment I don't really see people following it, which is fine. It's a bit silly. The song's quite long too. No rules, every person for themselves.
Now this right here. I'm gonna see if there's another rule, but if not,
It's our final one, and one which really is the truth behind this video. You don't have to follow anyone's made up rules in-game, nor the ones present in this video if you see fit. It's all again unwritten at the end of the day. They aren't real rules. Play as you see fit, whether you follow these rules or not. It is your prerogative to do so. I do hope you enjoyed, and be sure to drop your own unwritten rules down in the comments. Thanks for watching, and goodbye.
Great video by Ozzy, I don't know which way to say it. But the last one, at the end of the day, play how you want. Because DBD is a game where, like, there are no certain rules you have to follow on how to play it. And universally, it's just been bad taste to, you know, camp, tunnel, all this other stuff. But at the end of the day, it's not written in DBD's rules to not tunnel, not camp, not slug. These are all acceptable things and not reportable things, I think. I don't know about the slugging part. I think if you slug all 4 survivors and not hook any of them, I think that is... I think people have been reported for that. But anyway, overall, great video about Ozzy. Like I said, make sure you guys check him out. Thank you guys for watching. I want you guys to stay safe, stay positive, and remember, be mindful.